Good evening, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day for all of you here sharing it with us. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We see several of the police officers and firefighters, and we appreciate their attendance tonight also, and all the hard work that they do protecting us every day. Again, we're in masks. There has been some notice that in 2 weeks, on Monday, February 28th, the mitigation may become optional, at which time it will be probably optional for you to wear masks at the village meeting. But until then, we're following the governor's mandates. We're wearing masks. We're trying to social distance and doing our best to keep everybody safe. At this time, I would ask that Clerk Saladino call the roll.
Trustee Augustine?
Here.
Trustee Gale?
Here.
Trustee Katenik?
Here.
Trustee McGee? Trustee O'Brien?
Here.
Trustee Peterson?
Here.
President Kukler?
Here. And Trustee McGee had a family matter that she needed to attend to and is unable to make tonight's meeting. Not that you're going to be able to hear this if it's relevant to you, but we have been alerted that the internet feed may not be working, and so you may not be able to watch this meeting live stream. If you have any husbands at home watching or other people that may be looking to, you can advise them that if it doesn't come on during this meeting, it will be available tomorrow on our Facebook page. And again, sorry for any inconveniences with regard to that. Next, I would ask that Clerk Saladino lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everybody please stand.
And trustees, I'm going to ask your indulgence in that we revise the agenda slightly to do the consent and current matters before the manager's report. The manager's report will involve many things, including the capital project, so it could take a while. As far as the president's report, we have 3 exciting appointments. First, I would ask if there's a motion and a second to approve the appointment of Steve Nazare to the Community and Economic Development Commission. I'm not sure if Steve was able to make it out tonight. It doesn't look like it, but I've had the opportunity to talk with him. He's very excited to serve. I know he'll make a great addition to our Community and Economic Development Commission. The way I heard of Steve was he just emailed and said that he was interested in serving the village if there was an opening on a commission, and we had an opening, so it's fantastic. And I would encourage any resident that wants to get involved to just reach out, and if there's an opening, we'd be happy to appoint. So at this time, I would ask if there's a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion to appoint Mr. Nazare to the CEDC Commission.
I'll second.
And then I would ask first if there's any comment. If not, then seeing none, I would have Clerk Saladino call for a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous.
And it passes unanimously. Next up is the appointment of the village attorney, Ben Schuster, who's been a partner at Elrod Friedman, is willing to serve as our village attorney. As most people know, Mark Birkeland has been our village attorney for several decades now and has done a great job. However, he has moved to an of-counsel relationship with his firm, and in part of cutting back his hours, recommended that Ben take his spot. And again, I'd start by thanking Mark Birkeland for all of his service in the last 30 years. He truly has been a key part of many of the village's initiatives. We wish him, obviously, all the best, happiness, and health in the future, and we will be more formally honoring him on a date that he can make it to the meeting to be so honored. But moving on to Ben Schuster, we're excited to have him, and I'm looking here to see, one, if we need to have a vote. Okay, and why don't we then have a motion so that we can vote on that? A motion and a second.
I'll make the motion to accept Ben Schuster from Elrod Freeman to serve as the appointed counsel to the Village of Lagrange.
Second.
And then all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And that passes unanimously. That position needs to be sworn in, so we need to have, Paul, if you could, Clerk Saladino could do the honors, that would be fantastic.
I, Benjamin Schuster, having been appointed
To the office of village attorney
to the office of village attorney
in the village of Lagrange
in the village of Lagrange
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties
the duties
of the office of village attorney
of the office of village attorney
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability. Thank you.
And I think Clerk Saladino is just going to stand right there. And I would ask Officer Pelvicki to come forward. And officer, is anybody in your family here with you? Can they come up so that they can be on camera and everybody can see what a great family? If they're too shy, that's all right too. Whatever makes them happy. And this is a very exciting time for the Village of Lagrange, not only because we're able to swear in a fine officer and Jonathan Pelabicki, but it is our first time in swearing in an officer that had previous experience with the city of Chicago. The village recently changed our hiring guidelines specifically to be able to bring in lateral hires. We were hoping that it would broaden the candidates that were available for selection. We're thrilled that Officer Pelbicki applied for the position and accepted the position. And to give a little bit background, on January 24th, the Lagrange Board of Fire and Police Commissioners appointed Jonathan Pelbicki to the position of probationary police officer to fill one of our 4 vacancies. Jonathan obtained a Bachelor's of Arts degree in General Studies from Western Illinois University in 2013. In 2012, prior to graduating from college, Jonathan completed an internship with our Lagrange Police Department. Jonathan is a certified police officer under the authority of the state of Illinois and the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. Jonathan was employed by the City of Chicago Police Department from August 2015 until January of 2022, just prior to accepting the position of probationary police officer with our department. Since Jonathan is a certified police officer, he will not have to attend the police academy. Jonathan has entered into the police department field training program with a specially trained police officer. We're pleased to present Jonathan Pelbecki to the village board. And we really want to thank the family. We understand that a police officer and serving in the police department really involves the whole family. So thank you very much for sharing your significant other, your father, and we do appreciate it. And Clerk Saladino, if you can do the oath. And thank you again, and we are continue to look for fine men and women that would be interested in serving in Lagrange. So if you know anybody, please have them apply. Moving on to stormwater management. Again, since the significant storm event in June, the village has been reporting on the village's efforts to reduce the flooding and identify funding for flood mitigation through legislative, legal, and engineering initiatives. The village has identified projects to reduce flooding, each of which has its own challenges and benefits. Additional projects are in the process of being studied by the village engineers, and they continue to do so. As an update, the village entered into a task order with Christopher Burke back in August of 2021 to provide flood mitigation options in association with upcoming IDOT roadway projects. We again are working with IDOT to see those to fruition. The village has also entered into a task order with Christopher Burke in September of 2021 for 4 additional engineering projects, including school park district coordination that would be moving water to some open areas and storing it there at least temporarily, funding options that would pay for that, any buyout programs that would involve voluntarily homeowners wishing to sell if it made sense. Again, it would only make sense if there was an ability to store water on that property temporarily until they could move on to our sewers. And then immediate short-term projects for the depressional areas, primarily south of 47th, but a couple of the projects north of 47th also. Some of the initiatives that Burke completed during this time is a $17.5 million application, stressing application, for the FEMA BRIC grant programs, identification of areas of potential future study, and confirmation of previous engineering conclusions that new potential projects should be considered in the context of a larger stormwater management plan that includes maintaining or enhancing our current sewer outfalls. Each of the projects require partnerships with various agencies, such as the MWRD, IDOT, Cook County, and potential other village taxing bodies that would be schools, parks, and things of that nature. Over the last several months, the village has met with each of these agencies to discuss stormwater management initiatives in Lagrange. It's a regional problem, and we continue to require all entities to work together, and will continue to be available to work with them. The village board has also asked the Environmental Quality Commission to study a potential resident flood mitigation basement backup cost share program. I believe that that recommendation will be coming to the board shortly. That would be to pay a portion of the cost for the check valves as well as overhead sewers if a homeowner was interested in making that investment. The village has also continued to remain in close contact with the MWRD. The MWRD and Congresswoman Newman have selected Lagrange as part of a tour of stormwater management projects, specifically the village's permeable paver parking lot that was installed. That tour will be the morning of February 23rd, I believe at 9:30, and the public's welcome to come out. Finally, our attorneys have reported that the judge has scheduled the trial with Hansen to begin on July 18th of 2022. That's a significant development. As the residents who have been following this closely know, we have been pushing to get a trial date. We got a trial date. It's in Chancery Court. We fully expect that the trial will begin on July 18th, and the village legal team is very excited to have that date. As far as litigation goes, that time will be here in no time at all. So we realize that the homeowners that are dealing with flooding issues are very concerned about the spring. We share their concerns. We understand that storms are likely, and that causes not only frustration but sleepless nights. And we will continue to push to do what we can as a board to address the flooding mitigation issues. Again, we'll continue to also post on our webpage. Somewhat related but different, a lot of our residents are concerned about the quarry blasting. And the village has been in contact, and I personally have been in contact with Senator Kern in Senator Kern's office. Senator Kern has made it a point that he wants to have a Senate bill introduced, and that will be working on some type of regulation for the blasting. We've also have been in contact with Senator Lightfoot's office regarding potential state legislation, and our village staff will be meeting with Senator Lightfoot's staff. Again, we're looking for a bipartisan group to work to regulate the quarry, the blasting, the vibrations, and we believe damage that's being caused to our residents. There's also obviously dust and different pollutants at a minimum that are generated by the blasting, and we think that regulation needs to be increased. On a much happier note, Lagrange Restaurant Week will take place starting Friday, February 25th, and go through Sunday, March 6th. The restaurants will feature specially priced menus. It's been very successful in the years past. We know that it will be successful again. There also will be, we believe, reducing of the masks and those type of requirements, and it should be perfect timing. We encourage all residents and visitors to come and check out our restaurants. They could really use the support. So thank you. And the LGBA will be promoting it on their website, which is lagrangeevents.com. Palmer Place has been beloved by many people for generations. On tonight's agenda, there's an ordinance for special use and site plan approval for outdoor dining and live music for the new owners of Palmer Place, which is Leslie and Dave Tarman. They're going to keep a lot of things the same over at Palmer Place. They'll probably make some changes, tweaks, and improvements, and we're looking forward to that. We welcome the Tarmans. We also obviously want to express our gratitude to the Palmer family and their business for their service to our community for so many years. We were looking to recognize them. Today being Valentine's Day, it didn't really work out. And I know at the next meeting, which is February 28th, they're going to be honored by the Rotary Club. So the following meeting, which is March 14th, I believe, second Monday in March, we're going to have the Palmers, at least Phil and Paul here, so that we can appropriately recognize them. If anybody's listening and would like to come and share stories, feel free to join us at that meeting. And we're going to, again, skip the village manager's report for now and come back to that. So I would jump forward to public comments. Or do we need to have these read first? Why don't we have Clerk Saladino read what's on the agenda, and then we'll open it up for any public comments on matters on the agenda.
All right, consent agenda and vote. Matters on the consent agenda will be considered by a single motion and vote because they've already been considered fully by the board at a previous meeting or been determined to be of routine nature. Any member of the Board of Trustees may request that an item be moved from the consent agenda to current business for separate consideration. Item A, ordinance, design review permit number 114, 26 South Lagrange Road and 10 West Callender Avenue, Berker Properties. Item B, purchase, Spring Flower Planning Program. Item C, temporary use approval extension request, 27 Callender Avenue, Pillars Community Health. Item D, professional services agreement, Christopher B. Burke Engineering, Central Business District Streetscape Improvements Phase 2. Item E, minutes of the Village of Lagrange Board of Trustees regular meeting, Monday, January 10th, 2022. Item F, consolidated voucher 220124. Item G, consolidated voucher 220214. In current business, this agenda item includes consideration of matters being presented to the Board of Trustees for action. Item A, ordinance, special use and site plan approval for outdoor dining and live music at 56 South Lagrange Road, Palmer Place Restaurant and Beer Garden, Leslie and Dave Tarman, DTL Operations. Item B, ordinance, variation, maximum building coverage, Claire Nableton, 6692 Partners, 416 South Sunset Avenue.
Thank you, Clerk Saladino. At this time, I would ask if there's anyone with comments for matters on the agenda.
Thanks. In over 10 years since the flood that happened in 2011, our homes today are no closer to protection than they were 233 days ago. Every board member sitting here tonight has taken an oath to protect Lagrange, yet it's been 233 days since our most recent flood, and no progress has been made. We were informed that Christopher Burke conducted a study, and results were available from that study at the beginning of the year. Why have these results not been shared? We at Drive Lagrange have continued to ask for this data, yet it has not been provided. The holidays and cold weather have allowed the board to feel some relief in this pressure from its citizens, but I assure you, once the snow melts and the rain comes, the pressure and urgency will resume, and it may be too late. We are formally requesting that this data be shared with us and the village by March 1st. Thank you.
If you could please just state your name so that they have it. People at home.
Allison Bowe, B-O-W-E.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Claire Napleton. I'd like to have the record reflect that my name is spelled incorrectly on the paperwork. The correct name is Napleton. Other than that, I rest on all the information that was provided at the zoning board approval process. If you'd like to ask me any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Napleton. We appreciate you coming out. It is one of the things that will come up, and I'm sure if any trustee has any questions, we'll call you back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more comments on matters on the agenda, I would ask for a motion and a second on the consent portion of the agenda.
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, trustees. Any discussion?
Thank you, President Kukler. As previously stated, I recuse myself from voting agenda items related to the village prosecutor.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I'd ask that Clerk Saladino perform a roll call vote.
Trustee Augustine?
Aye.
Trustee Gale?
Aye.
Trustee Katina?
Aye.
Trustee McGee is absent. Trustee O'Brien?
Aye.
Trustee Peterson?
Aye.
And the consent agenda portion passes unanimously. Moving on to the current business, we do have two matters, as Clerk Saladino indicated. The first one being for an outdoor dining and live music. I've had the opportunity to meet with the Tarmans. They're, I'm sure, going to make a wonderful addition to Lagrange. We look forward to them jumping right in, as St. Patrick's Day will be here in no time. And so I would move this to Trustee Gale to introduce to the board.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, lost my spot. There we go. All right. The petitioners, Leslie and Dave Tarman of ETL Operations, are the owners of the property at 56 South Lagrange Road, Palmer Place Restaurant and Beer Garden. The petitioners are requesting a special use permit and site plan approval to continue operating the outdoor dining area and live music events that already occur at the subject property. Palmer Place's Restaurant and Beer Garden has been in business at the subject property since 1983. The existing outdoor dining area has been in operation since the mid-1980s. In 2002, the Village Board approved Ordinance number 00353, granting a special use permit for live entertainment within the building and the outdoor dining area. The petitioners are proposing no changes to the outdoor dining area and live music operations. The Palmer's Place St. Patrick's Day event is not included in the current or proposed special use ordinance. Per Section Zoning Code Section 9-103, it is a temporary use and is accordingly approved administratively on an annual basis. On January 11th, 2022, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter. At the hearing, the petitioners provided information on the existing outdoor dining and live music operations. No members of the public provided comment on the application. The Planning Commission found that the requested special use was consistent with the goal of the comprehensive plan that the downtown district be comprised of retail and entertainment uses. The Planning Commission found that the special use was not altering the existing operations and was not anticipated to have new or different impacts on the surrounding properties. The Planning Commission also found that the proposed special use will not cause undue traffic congestion or further impact parking, since neither the outdoor dining area nor the live music events were changing. After deliberation, the Planning Commission voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of the special use and site plan with 4 conditions carried over from Ordinance 00353 related to restrictions on time, duration, and frequency of live music events. Those conditions are in the attachment 1. The Planning Commission also recommended updating the noise restrictions within the special use ordinance to reference the current village noise control standards. Staff and the village attorney have prepared the attached ordinance pursuant to the direction of the Plan Commission, and if the board concurs with the recommendation of the commission, then a motion to approve the attached ordinance would be appropriate. And at this time, I move for approval of the ordinance.
Thank you, Trustee Gale. A second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Kutinik. Any discussion regarding this? Seeing none, I'd ask Clerk Saladino to call a roll call vote.
Trustee Peterson.
Aye.
Trustee O'Brien.
Aye.
Trustee McGee is absent. Trustee Katina.
Aye.
Trustee Gale.
Aye.
Trustee Augustine.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. Next up is the ordinance variation for maximum building coverage for the Claire Napleton, the Irish spelling of Napleton, on 6692 Partners. I would ask that Trustee O'Brien handle that matter.
The petitioner, 6692 Partners LLC, is the owner of the property at 46 South Sunset Avenue and has applied for a variation to construct an addition on the rear of the house. The subject property is located in the R2 district, which allows a maximum building coverage of 25%. The existing house is over the permitted maximum building coverage by more than 600 square feet. The proposed addition would result in a building coverage of 30% or 682.45 square feet more than permitted by the zoning code. On January 20th, 2022, the Zoning Board of Appeals held a public hearing on the application. At the hearing, the petitioner discussed the need for the addition to modernize the house originally constructed in 1957. The petitioner also discussed her desire to construct the addition without impacting the architecture style mid-century ranch. At the public hearing, no members of the public spoke about the application. The Zoning Board of Appeals found that the construction of the existing house prior to the 1991 zoning code creates a hardship. The Zoning Board of Appeals found that the hardship is not self-created as the petitioner did not construct the house. The Zoning Board of Appeals also found that the requested variation is the only reasonable solution for the subject property to modernize the house without impacting the style or layout of the house. The Zoning Board of Appeals also found that the construction of the addition would include the removal of existing impervious coverage, such as the pool, patio, and a portion of walkways, thereby reducing the existing lot coverage from 50 to 39% and bringing the proposed lot coverage into conformity with the maximum 45%. After the hearing was closed and the Zoning Board of Appeals deliberated, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the requested variation. The petitioner has submitted a document assigned by the neighboring owners in support of the requested variation, attachment 1. I move that the village board accept the ordinance that would approve the ordinance and authorize the variation.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien and Trustee Gale. Any comments from the board? Moving on to public comments regarding matters not on the agenda, which I do think we have one, and then we'll go to the manager's report.
Good evening, Village Board. My name is John Travis. I'm a resident of the Village of Lagrange. I'm here to kind of talk about a matter of personal importance and a matter that I think should be of importance to the board in general. So as many of you, probably all of you may remember, in May of last year, firefighter Adam Van Every died by suicide. Adam was a personal friend of mine. I'd known him for over 30 years, my entire life. Since his death, his widow, Lauren Prey, who remains a resident of the village with their 2 children, applied for survivor benefits to the firefighter pension board. As an attorney, I attempted to help her at the outset, but we brought in counsel who is specialized in pension work to help her out. The process at the beginning appeared to me to be a non-adversarial process, sort of a process of dotting I's and crossing T's. But it since has evolved into a process that I think is rather adversarial. And it appears to me, and there are people who may disagree, that the board is taking a position in opposition to Ms. Prey's request for survivor benefits. Now, to be clear, she's requesting survivor benefits, not line of duty benefits, just basic pension survivor benefits. Under Illinois law, benefits are due to a surviving spouse where the death is by accident or illness. This is 2022. I think At this time, it's accepted universally that mental illness qualifies as an illness. And I don't know of any other cause of suicide than mental illness. Lauren, at her own expense, has paid for a psychologist to come in, interview her mother, Adam's sister, and write a report for the board to establish a basis to say Adam was mentally ill, as though suicide needs more explanation. And that report has been presented to the pension board. The pension board, in turn, has decided to hire their own psychologist, what they call due diligence, and I'll take them at their word, but it appears to me to oppose Lauren's application. Further, the attorney for the pension board has expressed an interest in taking the depositions of Lauren, her mother, Adam's sister, and those people who were interviewed to create the report. I'm a litigator. I understand the need for gathering evidence. I get that. But I'm a litigator in a civil courtroom, at the Daly Center, in those courtrooms where you're in a clearly adversarial process. This is not that. This is a process where we have a widow applying for benefits that she's entitled to. And I think it's entirely inappropriate to be dragging the family who, if anybody here has been affected by suicide, you know that it's a wound that never really heals. And it's been less than a year. It's raw for the family. It's raw for me. I think it's a waste of village funds, a waste of resources, a waste of time to interview the family members. I believe it's a waste of resources to hire a separate psychologist to oppose Lauren's application for survivor benefits. Adam served this village with honor and distinction for a number of years. I graduated high school with him in a small town in Michigan. Somehow we both ended up here in Lagrange. And from the day he graduated high school for the rest of his adult life, he dedicated to serving as a firefighter. I don't know what happened that caused him to leave us, but I do know he must have been in great, great pain. And he's left a wife and 2 kids who need the support of his pension benefits. I'll just close by saying Adam was a wonderful person. I think anybody who knew him would say that. I believe the fire chief would, you don't have to take my word for it, I believe he would agree with me that Adam served this village with distinction and honor, and no one would deny his character. So what I'm asking here today is just that the board ensure that the pension board does the right thing and allow Lauren to receive her survivor benefits. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Counselor. And I think the board, and I'll speak for the Board of Trustees and say, we agree that Adam served with honor and distinction. We agree that he was a wonderful person and hope the best for his family. It's not our role, though, to tell the pension board what to do. And so we won't be getting involved as far as what the pension board decides on that matter.
And I understand that to an extent, but there are members of the management of the village who attend these pension board meetings. I won't claim to understand the relationship, but there is, there are members that attend those meetings every time, and the village can intervene in certain circumstances, as I understand it. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments for matters not on tonight's agenda, I would move to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Village Hall will be closed on Monday, February 21st, 2022, in recognition of President's Day. A full complement of public safety personnel will be available in the event of an emergency, and regular Village Hall office hours will resume on Tuesday, February 22nd at 8:30 a.m. Also this evening, staff would appreciate the opportunity to facilitate a capital projects workshop as a key component of our annual budget development process. The proposed budget anticipates a surplus fund balance at the end of the 5-year budget period, which demonstrates the ability to fund the identified projects over this time period. The proposed plan for capital improvements demonstrates a continued emphasis on the maintenance and implementation and replacement of the village's aging infrastructure. The capital improvements plan has also been designed to execute on the strategic priorities identified by the village board. As a result of these priorities and an increase in general fund revenues from sales tax and state shared revenues, staff has identified opportunities for additional investments in our capital needs, which will be outlined further this evening. Staff is prepared to answer questions regarding previous or current projects. And with your permission, Mr. President, I will ask Finance Director Lou Ciparoni to begin the discussion with a general overview of these opportunities, and then turn it over to Director of Public Works, Rick Colby, to present a status report and staff recommendations for the capital projects, water and sewer funds in that order.
Thank you, Village Manager Peterson, and to our Finance Director, Lou Ciparoni. If you could start us out, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we got into any specifics regarding the capital projects and the programs, which Rick will be talking about in just a little bit, we want to provide the village board with a little bit of background information regarding funding capital projects. Two different sources that primarily fund all of our infrastructure projects in Lagrange. The first one being motor fuel tax. That makes a transfer for specific capital projects. Motor fuel tax funding, MFT, revenues are specifically restricted for street reconstruction and resurfacing. So we receive about $600,000 annually from motor fuel funds. Those are allocated towards specific street projects. Secondly, the general fund also makes an annual transfer for capital projects. However, this transfer may vary depending on the availability of funding on an annual basis. Several years ago, due to the Great Recession, which negatively impacted village revenues back in 2008, the general fund transfer was reduced from $1 million to $900,000, and then further reduced to $700,000 in 2010. And that remains our current funding level today. Currently, the general fund is transferring $700,000 towards the capital projects fund for specific infrastructure projects. So the reduced transfer was necessary back in 2008 in order to continue to provide funding for our vital public services. It's always been the village's intent to restore that annual transfer as soon as it became. The most recent increase in our general fund revenues, which we've primarily seen from increases in sales tax and income taxes, beginning in fiscal year 22-23, which will start May 1 of this coming year, we are proposing to restore the annual transfer for capital projects back to the $1 million annual transfer from pre-2008. Those additional revenues are allowing us to do that, which will provide funding for enhanced capital maintenance programs, which also play a critical role in the preservation of village infrastructure. With that being said, I think at this time we'd like to turn the microphone over to Rick, our new Public Works Director, and he'll be discussing the specific capital projects and those maintenance programs in a bit more detail.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to present the review of the capital projects, water, and sewer budgets to the board. This report will consist of a brief summary of over 4 attached board report. The review will highlight accomplishments for 21 and 22, as well as plans for future years. The budget is a living document that aids staff in shaping workload for the upcoming budget years and beyond. And I will be moving quickly from topic to topic. So if at any point you have questions, comments, and that something's not making sense, please just interrupt me and we'll happily stop and staff will address those questions. So the first project is Stone Avenue train station renovation. Improvements to the Stone Avenue train station, which included bicycle, sidewalk, ADA improvements, and parking enhancements, were completed in early 2019. The total cost of the project was $1.8 million. It was entirely funded by grants. Since this is a federally funded project, we are working with our engineers to complete the project closeout, which can take several years to complete. We expect that later this year, the village board will need to approve the final revisions to the construction engineering contracts to reflect final expenditures. The village has received numerous requests for a public restroom at the train station. Since the village was able to complete the work below the budgeted amounts, The village subsequently requested that the West Suburban Mass Transit District reallocate the remaining grant funds to complete the remodeling of an existing ticket office into a private restroom into a single-use public restroom. Since the existing ticket office at the Stone Avenue train station is no longer used by Metro, the village proposes to remodel this space to an ADA accessible public restroom in 2022. Funding from the excesses from the Stone Avenue Improvement Grant for the purchase of a trackless machine will be available for use towards this public restroom renovation if necessary. Edgewood Avenue Rehabilitation Project from 47th Street to 51st Street. This section of roadway is in need of repair. The village applied for federal aid designation for this route, but was unfortunately denied in its application. Designation as a federal aid route would have provided the funding for the preferred alternative, which included the addition of a sidewalk on the east side of the roadway, a shared bike lane, replacement of the water main within the roadway, and reconstruction of the pavement at a cost of $3.6 million. The village received a grant in amount of $750,000 through DCEO, which was supported by Representative Durkin. The grant is required to be used by May 31st, 2023. Funds are not currently available in the water fund to complete the preferred alternative within the available period of performance of the grant funding. Therefore, staff recommends as an alternative to rehabilitate the roadway and forego the replacement of the water main. The estimated total cost of the pavement rehabilitation alternative is $1.2 million. This alternative would rehabilitate Edgewood in its current configuration. The option would not include the construction of new sidewalk, but would include a shared bike lane striping in the roadway. In addition to the pavement rehabilitation, identified minor sewer repairs included as part of the project scope. Funds are available for this alternative, which we anticipated would be performed in FY 22-23. To aid in this decision-making, staff asked our village engineer to evaluate the water main, which was built in 1957. According to our village engineer, the water main is considered a lower priority replacement as compared to other portions. If the water main condition becomes an issue in the next 15 years, the village could consider lining the water main in the future in order to reduce disturbances to the recently resurfaced street surface as funds become available. Now the 47th drainage improvements. A number of initiatives have been undertaken in response to the severe flooding that occurred in the village over the past number of years, as President Kukler has already outlined in the stormwater update. As outlined in more detail in the report, the village conducted engineering studies which identified stormwater management alternatives such as the 50th Street relief sewer and the Brainerd Avenue flood wall. In April 2015, a voter-approved referendum for the funding of stormwater project was approved. While the design and bid of the 50th Street project was completed, the project was stopped and delayed in its original schedule due to litigation with the quarry. The village recently applied for a FEMA brick grant to assist with costs required to match the MWRD's planned investment of $35 million for this project. The total funds available for the construction of stormwater improvements is estimated to be $13.5 million. There is an additional $2.1 million in American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funds that are recommended to be allocated towards sewer improvements, and the village is continuing to study how to best utilize those funds. The village and the quarry remain in ongoing. The village continues to seek out grants for these projects to reduce the cost of the projects to village residents through in the state of Illinois and Cook County. Fire Department apparatus floor. In FY 21-22, a project was completed to repair the west center and east bays of the apparatus floor for a cost of $248,000. Due to a combination of phases 1 and 2, the overall project was completed well below budget. Phase 3, to complete improvements in the rear bay, is budgeted for FY 23-24. Fire Department driveway apron improvements are budgeted to be completed in the upcoming year of 22-23 in order to achieve optimal pricing within our 50-50 sidewalk solicitation. Lagrange Road train station parking improvements. In response to business concerns, staff proposed to create an additional 14 diagonal spaces through the elimination of the existing taxi stand on Hillgrove Avenue. Metro did not approve this redesign, however, they did agree to redesign in the Hillgrove station parking as part of their other improvement plans for Lagrange Road train station. The village continues to work with Metro regarding other proposed station improvements, including tuck pointing, replacement of BIC pavers, and roofing, as well as parking. The cost, if any, to the village for these improvements is not yet known, but is assumed for budgeting purpose at this time no funding from the village will be required. Funding from excesses from the Stone Avenue Improvement Grant for the trackless machine will be available to use towards Metro Lagrange Road Station project needs if necessary. Pedestrian push button signs. As pedestrian safety initiative, pedestrian activated cross signals were installed. The project was completed in December of 2020 at the amount of $18,838. Northeast Planning Area. This project was completed in 2017 and represents improvements for previous YMCA redevelopment site intersection improvements at Lagrange Road and Ogden and Locust Avenues. The amount of $158,554 for construction costs. This amount will continue to be budgeted in future fiscal years until the final invoice from IDOT is received. It is normal that final payment can take several years to be processed by IDOT for a project such as this. The Grange Road corridor improvements, 52nd Street pedestrian crossings. IDOT did not approve the pedestrian crossing improvements at this intersection that were previously requested by the village. The grant funds in the amount of $120,000 have been repurposed to the streetscape improvement projects in the Central Business District. More on the streetscapes project will be discussed in the next few minutes. 50/50 sidewalk program. This 50/50 sidewalk program is whereas residents and village split the cost of public sidewalk replacement. In 2021, the program assisted approximately 45 residents and participated at an approximate cost of $54,000. Sidewalk replacement program continues to be a popular program with approximately 83 residents on the waiting list, all of whom were called to participate in 2021. Also successfully completed in the fall of 2021 were mobility improvements generally in the hospital area along 47th Street, a $75,000 grant from Senator Curran. The total budget of $128,000 in FY 21-22 reflects the 50/50 sidewalk program and DCEO grant. In order to keep pace with demand, the proposed budget includes $50,000 for sidewalks and $20,000 for saw cutting of trip hazards on an as-needed basis in FY 22-23 and beyond. Tree planting. The village tries to plant a replacement tree for each parkway tree removed due to disease or damage. The average number of trees planted for the past 5 years is 193 trees per year. The proposed budget includes $67,000 for tree replacement. Sewer televising. The village owns and maintains approximately 360,000 linear feet of sewers. This routine cleaning and televising of the sewers is important so the system operates properly. In FY 21-22, of the village's 2021 sewer televising program. Approximately 17,800 lineal feet, or 5%, of the village's sewer system was scheduled for routine cleaning and televising. In addition to the village's standard program, we also conducted an analysis of approximately 15,300 lineal feet, or 4%, of sewer in areas of known flooding to determine if there were any issues increasing stormwater flooding risk. Baxter & Woodman has completed the assessment of the 2021 sewer televising program and has determined that there are no structural defects present that would negatively affect the existing sewer capacity or flow. The information from the sewer televising is used to prioritize sewer repairs both for the sewer lining program and upcoming roadway improvements. As such, we propose to continue with the routine program in the total amount of $60,000. 47th Street corridor improvements. Similar to the 52nd Street project, IDOT did not approve pedestrian crossing improvements on 47th Street as originally requested. Grant funds in the amount of $240,000 have been repurposed to streetscape improvements in the Central Business District. Ogden Avenue corridor improvements. This line item is for flashing yellow beacons that were installed on Ogden Avenue above. The project is complete. Funding for this project was secured through a DCO grant in the amount of $40,000. The final cost of the project was $27,300. East Avenue intersection improvements. This intersection was identified as one of the priority improvements part of the Joliet Road settlement due to a number of accidents at this location and poor traffic operational service level. In 2017, IDOT completed their Phase 1 preliminary. The scope of the work includes signalization of the 47th and East Avenue intersection, reconfiguration of the railroad bypass at the southwest corner, street light upgrades, new sidewalks. IDOT is planning to replace the existing storm sewer within East Avenue and construct a new sewer on 47th Street from East Avenue to the McCook Ditch. IDOT has completed the preliminary plans and specifications for the project, and the village has provided comments. IDOT is targeting a letting for this project in the next 2 to 4 years. A grant in the amount of $200,000 from the DCEO and $175,000 from MI Homes has been designated to fund the project components the village is responsible for, such as the sidewalk, street lighting, and burial of overhead utilities. Neighborhood street projects. The purpose of the neighborhood street resurfacing plan program is to plan for the routine resurfacing and repair of neighborhood streets on a defined schedule. In order to accomplish this goal, the village completed the first detailed street condition survey in 2011 and updated that survey in 2016. The next update to the street condition survey is in the process of being finalized by Baxter & Woodman and is planned to be completed in early 2022. Report showed a gap between the identified capital improvement needs for streets and the current fundings for roadways. The village has increased the budget for neighborhood streets projects from 1.8 million every 6 years to 3 million every 3 years on a pay-as-you-go basis. This change in funding is primarily for maturity of the streetlight bonds, redirecting funds from Maple Avenue Relief Sewer Project, street repairs, and additional MFT funding from the Rebuild Illinois Capital Plan derived from an increase in the motor fuel tax rate, commonly referred to as the transportation renewal. Last year's program included resurfacing of existing asphalt on the streets of Maple, Elm, and Goodman, as well as additional patching in various locations throughout the village. The project was completed in the fall and a total cost of $1,454,950. Also included in the program was the resurfacing of East Avenue north of Ogden as a shared project with the Village of Brookfield. The total cost of the village's share of the project was $43,000. Over the past 4 years, the village has invested approximately $5 million in neighborhood street projects. The street condition map on 3 Alpha, page 23, shows the work that has been completed and the work that is proposed over the next 3 years under various projects. As previously discussed, for FY 22-23, staff is recommending the resurfacing of Edgewood Avenue without water main replacement at this time. The estimated cost for the FY 22-23 program is $1.2 million, and is funded through a combination of MFT funds and grant funds. The FY 23-24 resurfacing improvement program includes an approximate length of 1.1 miles of Brainerd Avenue between 47th and the village limit north of Ogden Avenue, and approximately 0.25 miles of Shawman Avenue, both of which are federally funded. The village has received federal SDP grant funds for these projects, and the sidewalk, ADA improvements, and curb and gutter repairs are included as part of the. There is also a related project which is locally funded for an associated. The water main replacement project is a standard to maximize the federal resurfacing project benefit as a road. The water main replacement is estimated to be $2 million and is included within the water fund. The current anticipated schedule for the project is designed for the water main in May 1st of 2022 with completion in the fall. Water main construction beginning in the spring of 23 to be completed in the fall of 23. Roadway construction to begin in the fall of 23 to be completed in the spring of 24. Pursuant to a new state law, municipalities that replace water mains on or after January 1st, 2022 must identify and replace all lead services connected to the water main, including service lines on a property and within the building. The first shutoff valve are 18 inches inside the building, whichever is shorter. Lead is not present in the village's water source, which comes from Lake Michigan, but it can enter the water. The village is currently in the process of evaluating and implementing policies and costs associated with compliance with this law. The village board was provided a technical memorandum containing a number of proposed steps in order to comply with the new law. Staff recommends the village continue to offer an opportunity for residents to participate. We have done since 2018. Residents that choose not to participate will be required to submit a waiver as required by the Act. Additional costs may be incurred for the administration and the implementation of the requirements evaluated as the project is fully developed. We will also be continuing to closely monitor funding opportunities and best practices. More information is provided by the state. In FY 26-27, we anticipate there will be $1.5 million in water funds for water main replacement, with specific segments to be analyzed based on the upcoming street condition survey and the status of federal aid applications. Burlington Avenue from Lagrange Road to Ogden Avenue is a federal aid eligible route and in need of resurfacing. As such, staff recommends applying for federally funding for FY 26-27. The STP local call for projects ends on March 4th, 2022 for federal fiscal years 26 and 27 and would require an estimated total local match of $122,000. Additionally, for the same STP local call for projects, the Village of Western Springs has asked the village to consider a joint application for resurfacing of Gilbert Avenue from 47th to Ogden for federal fiscal years 26 and 27. We are currently working with Western Springs to identify the costs and feasibility of partnering on such a project. Staff continues to recommend a data-driven approach for selecting roadways for repair based on the 5-year street condition survey. Based on the 2016 street condition survey and anticipated 22 street condition study, the identified and future roadway repairs currently exceed available funding. If the village is to keep pace with roadway infrastructure improvements, additional funding sources must be identified. The village considers alternative funding in addition to the pay-as-you-go method in the future. Additional funding could be available to support current and ongoing infrastructure needs. The village applies for grants for roadway projects whenever possible. although not all roadways are eligible for grant funding. As part of its strategic plan, the village board preliminarily discussed the possibility of issuing bonds for an additional funding for infrastructure projects in approximately FY 26-27. The funding for the bonds could be provided through a property tax referendum or other funding sources and would provide additional funding mechanisms every 10 years as bonds mature. These funds would be in addition to the pay-as-you-go program funding. If approved, a $15 million bond is estimated to cost the average property owner about $200 per year. Staff recommends the board continue to consider this option in order to move efficiently to address its infrastructure needs. Streetscape improvements. This item was previously included in the consent agenda. Some streetscape components in the central business district are now 25 to 30 years old and are showing signs of deterioration. Hitchcock Design Group evaluated the overall functionality of the public way, provided a preliminary plan. Funding for construction was included in the budget in FY 2021 in the amount of $1.185 million. Due to ongoing and largely unknown impacts of COVID-19, staff recommended only using a portion of the funding for maintenance components of the projects in FY 21-22. Specifically, $685,000 was budgeted, which is a portion of the budget for the project that had already been earmarked through grants and MI Home contributions. Staff recommends completing the following phases of work in the order listed below. Repair and replace cracked or damaged masonry walls near the foundation or raise planters as necessary. Replace, refurbish wayfinding signage at kiosk to align new branding. Replace brick pavers through the central business district. Restripe pedestrian crosswalk or replace with brick pavers. And replace damaged tree grates. In August of 2021, a contract for the work was awarded to Copenhagen Construction in the amount of $394,675 to construct the first phase of paver replacements and sidewalk repairs. In October, a change order in the amount of $63,554 was approved as a result of grant requirements. Due to material lead time delays, the project was unable to be constructed in the fall of 2021. Copenhagen has agreed to a no-cost time extension in order to complete the work this spring. This project is estimated to begin construction in April to be completed in June of 2022. Staff is exploring all means to sequence this work within the bounds of the contract and the grant requirements to limit the impact of this and future phases of the work on businesses and high pedestrian traffic areas. Wayfinding signage and informational kiosks will also be updated using available funding in the FY 21-22 Gateway Sign project budget. Due to the importance of the downtown to our economic vitality, it is important to complete this work as quickly as possible to maintain a uniform appearance and brand. Due to positive capital fund reserve balances, staff is recommending to complete the entire $1.185 million project as originally contemplated in FY 22-23. The remaining unallocated funds of approximately $652,844 are proposed to be allocated from the positive capital fund reserves to allow for the construction of the balance of the Central Business District brick paver replacement, sidewalk repair, and crosswalk improvements in FY 22-23. Also in FY 22-23, as a part of this budget, vertical masonry walls near the fountain will be repaired under a separate scope of work. Estimates are based upon pricing in the current 21 awarded project and could be subject to variability. Staff will work with businesses to limit disruption as much as possible, taking note of key events both in the spring and the fall. Of note is that all crosswalk improvements are included in the Phase 2 scope of work. These have the largest potential impact as it interrupts both pedestrian and also vehicle traffic. There will need to be significant phasing to complete this work, which may stretch into the spring of 23 in order to minimize disruptions to businesses and traffic flow within the central business district. Alternatives such as night work and acceleration will be evaluated, but these alternatives add cost and could result in a reduction in the quantity of work performed. Additional non-maintenance items identified in the October 20 conceptual streetscape plan are recommended to be considered further in subsequent years. Miscellaneous engineering. This account covers expenses for consulting engineering that are not anticipated, not associated with a capital project or require special expertise. In FY 21-22, expenditures primarily included engineering services for stormwater-related services. In FY 22-23, the budget includes $40,000 for miscellaneous engineering. Funds will allow for external support as needed for flexibility over the upcoming budget year. Previously, the village had earmarked $20,000 for this line item. Crack filling program. Staff recommendings to continue with a crack fill program in order to extend the pavement life of the village streets in the budget amount of $20,000 annually. Thermoplastic street marking. Staff recommends continuing with this program to restripe pavement markings that are damaged or worn the amount of $15,000 annually. Street patching program. Due to increase in the transfer from the general funds to the capital fund, as Lou was alluding to at the onset, a new maintenance program is proposed in the amount of $100,000 for annual street patching. Street patching program will consist of larger sections of roadway that exceed the capacity of our in-house potholing filling program. This maintenance strategy, along with crack sealing program, will help extend the service life and integrity of our roadways. Sewer lining program. As previously stated, the village owns and maintains 360,000 feet of sewers. In September of 2021, the village entered into a contract with Performance Construction and Engineering LLC to perform sewer repair work in the total construction cost of $457,039 in various areas, including point repair and sewer lining. Due to delay in permitting from IDOT, the project could not be completed in the fall. The contractor has agreed to a no-cost time extension. The IDOT permit for the FY21 sewer repair project is approved. This project will complete in the early spring of 22, immediately following the break in winter weather. Proposed in FY22-23 sewer lining budget includes $150,000 in the sewer fund and $250,000 in the capital projects funds to address priority repairs, sewer lining or sewer repair, identified as part of the recent sewer televising program. Due to the increase of the transfer from the general fund for capital improvements, the budget has been increased for sewer lining by $150,000 annually. The FY22-23 sewer fund budget includes $20,000 for associated engineering. Village Hall resurface lot and parking lot 8. The Village Hall surface parking lot and parking lot 8 were replaced with permeable pavers in October of 2019. The village applied for a green infrastructure grant with MWRD to install brick pavers and was awarded a grant in the amount of $198,721. The final construction cost for the project was $397,441. This project is now complete. Parking lot 3. This is the surface lot located on the north side of the intersection of Madison and Harris Avenues and is in need of repair. The village reapplied for a green infrastructure grant in 2021 and unfortunately was not selected. The cost to construct the lot using permeable pavers is estimated to be approximately $300,000. Due to the current shortfall in parking fund reserves, current funds of $100,000 are budgeted in the FY22-23 for this project. To make up the difference, the village could consider using small infrastructure grants awarded through the Illinois Bond Fund /DCEO that may be appropriate for additional sidewalk replacement or permeable parking lot paver projects. Some of these grants have not yet been allocated to capital projects, as additional information regarding the grant is forthcoming. Alternatively, the parking lot could be resurfaced using asphalt under current available budget. Staff recommends exploring these supplemental funding options and pursuing a permeable paver parking lot project in FY22-23 for Lot 3 to maintain consistency and also to support the village's strategic priority of furthering green initiatives. The final project scope will be dependent upon the outcome of the bidding process. Future outlook. This section is for projects that have been identified but not yet budgeted. Transfer of debt service includes debt requirements for the $11.5 million 2015 sewer improvement bonds. Unless there are any specific questions regarding these items for staff, I'll now move on to the water and sewer.
Sorry about that. Great job so far, but I'm fine with having Rick move on, and then we can ask whatever questions at the completion.
Got it. Water fund status report and staff recommendations. The water rate. The village's goal is to maintain reserves of about 50% of operating expenses. Mainly due to the Ashland and Blackstone water main project several years ago, we estimate that water fund reserves at the end of the fiscal year will be 23.4% of operating expenses. The City of Chicago implemented a water rate increase of 3%, which was passed on by the Village of McCook to governmental users effective June 1st, 2020. McCook also implemented a 1.35 increase in water rates in June of 2021. The rate increases from McCook result in an increase of water purchase of $125,000 annually. Given the COVID-19 pandemic, the village did not pass along the increase from McCook to residents. To date, the village has not been notified of any further rate increases for the upcoming year. The City of Chicago has indicated they will be adopting the American Water Works Association, AWWA, water rate methodology in the near future. At this time, it is not yet clear how this may impact future water costs. The current 5-year budget does not include any planned water rate increases to residents. Therefore, no additional water rate increases are proposed at this time. However, it is the village's policy to pass along rate increases from Chicago and McCook as they may occur. As previously stated, given the COVID-19 pandemic, we have opted not to pass along increases from McCook for the last 2 years to the residents at this time. McCook rate increases will need to be included as part of the ongoing water and sewer rate study and included as part of that analysis for future planning purposes. Staff continues to recommend that the water and sewer improvements be considered at the same time of roadway improvements are being constructed in order to gain economies of scale. The water and sewer rate study will include assessing water and sewer capital improvements and potential bond issuance. The study is expected to be presented to the village board for discussion and consideration in 2022. Lake Michigan water allocation. The Illinois Department of Natural Resources, IDNR, manages the diversion of Lake Michigan water for potable consumption. In 2021, the village successfully worked with IDNR to revise the community water surface allocation and made adjustments based on actual usage and projected need. We anticipate that this will not impact the village's water operations, and we do not anticipate any budget impacts as a result of this modification. Non-revenue water. The village has continued with initiatives to improve water accountability that include replacing the existing pump station, leak locating and repair, audits of water billing, and water main replacement. Please see pages 3 Alpha 44 and 45 for charts that detail the historical trends for water accountability on a monthly basis. The significance of the charts is that while billable water, shown in blue, remains relatively constant, total water purchased, red, is less in recent year and fluctuates based on drought, breaks, and other conditions. Water accountability by month shows similar fluctuating trends based on time of year and breaks. More information regarding our leak detection initiatives and improvements will be provided shortly. Lead Service Line Replacement and Notification Act. As stated earlier, effective January 22nd, water main replacement projects requiring corresponding replacement of lead service lines from the main to the home. Since 2017, the village has maintained a lead service line inventory on its website. As service lines are replaced, the inventory is updated. As previously stated, lead is not present in the water received from Lake Michigan or in the village's water system, but can be present through the corrosion of individual water line surfaces. Over the last several years, the village has offered a program to residents when water main projects are executed that provide for voluntary replacement of lead services at the homeowner's cost. Staff is in the process of continuing to evaluate impacts of the new legislation on the village's operations. Preliminary recommendation is to continue to offer the opportunity for residents to participate at their option and cost in lead service replacement program offered as part of a larger water main replacement project, as we have done since 2018. Residents that choose not to participate will be required to submit a waiver as required by the Act. We will also continue to maintain the inventory of water line service material as we have for several years on the village website. On average, approximately 30 services are removed from the lead inventory each year. The village will need to continue to work with homeowners to replace lead services within the next 15 to 17 years. The Act requires municipalities create a plan and inventory and report that to the IEPA by April 2024. More information regarding lead drinking water is available on the village website and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency website. We'll continue to monitor the lead service line legislation, grants, and options going forward to provide more information as it becomes available. Professional services in FY 22-23 include $15,000 for inspection and evaluation of alternatives for the Burke Cork standpipe pursuant to the IEPA Risk and Resiliency Report. The FY 23-24 professional service budget also reflects $25,000 for additional engineering related to the development of inventory and plans as required by the Lead Line Replacement and Notification Act. Geographic Information System. Staff continues to make progress on the developing of the village's GIS system. GIS is being used across all departments and has become an integral tool to delivering services. Leak surveys. As previously mentioned, a yearly leak survey is undertaken to find previously undetected water leaks in the village's system in order to improve accountability and reduce expenses. The 2021 Water Distribution Leak Survey surveyed 306,240 linear feet of distribution at a cost of $11,000. It identified 11 leaks which were corrected. The annual saving for these corrections is approximately $122,097. Additionally, between June 20th and January 22, Public Works staff identified and corrected 41 water main breaks. However, in large part due to the age of our system, the rate of correction is relatively equal to the rate of loss, and not resulting in a noticeable difference in non-revenue water. Staff recommends continuing with the leak survey program for future years to reduce non-revenue water and reduce expenses. Our practices for leak identification and correction are in line with the best practices currently recommended by IDNR. Staff has budgeted to explore leak detection technology and water metering auditing to address apparent losses, all in an effort to be the best possible stewards for this critical resource. Water mains and capital improvements. In general, the repair and or replacement of underground utilities should be considered and coordinated with roadway rehabilitation programs to gain economies of scale and limit disruption to residents. In FY 2021-22, Hilden Avenue Water Tower was completed under budget at a cost of $625,691, which included the addition of the Village of Lagrange logo. As discussed earlier, staff proposes to resurface Brainerd Avenue through a federal STP grant in FY 23-24. Staff recommends the water main repair on Brainerd Avenue in advance of the project due to the current condition and age. Based on available funding, $123,000 is budgeted in FY 22-23 for engineering and $1.882 million in FY 23-24 for construction. No additional water main replacement projects are planned until 26-27 in order to build up adequate funding under the village's pay-as-you-go program. Staff and the village engineer are currently analyzing potential roadway and water main replacement projects for FY 26-27. And finally, the sewer fund. A sewer rate. The village's goal is to maintain sewer fund reserves of about 50% of operating expenses. Based on recent capital expenditures on sewer lining, we estimate that sewer fund reserves at the end of the fiscal year will be 33% of operating expenses. As previously discussed, the village board has recently asked the Environmental Quality Commission to evaluate the feasibility of a new residential cost share program for flood mitigation measures. The potential cost of such a program would be funded through a sewer rate increase. It's currently estimated to require a sewer rate increase of 10 cents per 100 cubic feet, or approximately $10 annually to residents. No additional sewer rate increases are proposed at this time, pending the results of the current water and sewer rate study. Sewers. Costs estimated for sewer main rehabilitation replacement were developed based on the sewer televising program and will be updated each year based on these reports. Most identified sewer repairs involved repairing the sewer by sewer lining techniques. Therefore, the sewer lining is not necessarily to coincide with the street resurfacing program, since sewer lining does not require excavation. This fund also includes the $3 million from the bond issuance for the 50th Street Storm Sewer Project. Sewer lining program. As previously mentioned in the capital projects report, we recommend that the budget for sewer lining and repair be increased by $150,000 annually, the total annual program of $400,000 per year. The proposed FY 22-23 program is in the process of being finalized based on results of the recently completed sewer televising program and previously identified needs. That concludes the capital, water, and sewer bonds budget workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Colby. Great job for on your first one. It's clear you've jumped in running, and we do appreciate it. Fantastic job. I did have a couple things I wanted to bring up and highlight first, and that is, so that the residents really know, we are this year going to be able to address Edgewood Avenue south of 47th Street. It's a project that the residents over there have been clamoring for. Again, that project will be redoing the roadway with striping for a bike lane. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But due to funding, we won't be able to put in a sidewalk in that area.
That is correct.
And again, I do think that that'll be a major improvement to that area. I think the residents will be happy. We appreciate Leader Durkin securing funds that helped make that possible. Going on to the water leak study, I was a little, and I'm just looking at page 5 of the report, where you said that we did a water distribution leak study. It cost $11,000, and their savings for the corrections is $122,000. But are you saying that that's not significant? That seems like a huge number to me, a great number, a fantastic job. But is that not significant, or what did you mean in another line where it said something about not being significant?
Yeah, so the M.E. Simpson performed this. That is to capture the estimated return on the investment for the leak study that we perform. They estimated, in those 11 leaks, they estimated the rate of water loss and then compared that to our cost per unit. So the cost, basically improvement associated with repair of those leaks was $120,000. The total budget as a percentage of the total water loss, that's less than 1%, or just as a total water consumption, water purchase.
Okay, so on the percentage, it wouldn't dollar-wise necessarily be viewed as material, except I would like the residents to know that we're capturing now or containing $122,000 of water that otherwise was going into the ground.
Correct.
And we pay for it from a cook. So if we don't get it to a resident's house, it's lost. It's truly lost to the village. So I would encourage continuing leak studies. I mean, to me, it's a great return on that investment. And then again, I know we talked about it. I know I talked about it in my report under the sewer funding. The funding we're waiting. It's in the process of coming from the EQC. I know you've helped by going to those meetings with Manager Peterson. We expect that shortly, correct? A recommendation regarding funding or putting aside funds for an overhead sewer and check valve?
Yeah, that is correct, President.
And I think that'll be a great opportunity for the residents that want to make that investment. We on the board are looking for direction from the EQC on some of the parameters that they have in mind. I know that the board wants to help the residents in any way that we can. And again, that's going to be funded by an increase of the sewer rate. And really, these things, we as a board want to make opportunities for residents, but the money has to come from somewhere. So it's an enterprise fund, meaning that the sewer fund in itself is supposed to pay for itself. So it makes the most sense that we use the money that fund generates. So after saying that, I'd open it up to any of the trustees that want to make any comments on what was. And Trustee Kutynek, start with you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just if I can extend one of your questions. So the Edgewood project I know has been long overdue. I'm glad to see that done. So I think that essentially goes from 47th to 51st, just I guess it would be just north of the hospital. And I know in the past we've asked or encouraged the hospital to participate to extend from 51st to 55th, which in my opinion, and I happen to live in the area, so I know this, is really the poor condition of the road, which, happens to be in, it's not Lagrange proper. Have we approached the hospital or any other, whatever the governing body is of that short stretch to see if they would be interested in participating or leveraging while we're out there doing that work to really to do a complete project, in my opinion, and take it from 47th to all the way to 55th without Lagrange funds.
And if Manager Peterson could probably address that best. Or
sure, I can.
Director Colby, whichever one, I'm not sure who would have had conversations with people outside the village.
I'm happy to help with that. So yes, the village did have conversations with the hospital. The hospital was very helpful in helping us secure the $750,000 grant from Representative Durkin. The project is anticipated, I believe, on Edgewood to go from 47th Street south to our village limit, which is just past the hospital or very close to the edge of the hospital property. The area that you're mentioning that's south of there is actually in unincorporated Lyons Township. Okay. And so we would have to talk to them about their plans on when they're expecting to make repairs to that section of the roadway. And we'd be happy to reach out to them to let them know about our plans, assuming that the village board concurs with that recommendation, and work with them on a potential joint project.
Yeah, no, I thanks for that information. I appreciate that. And, just like Western Springs has approached us on Gilbert, the east-west, I would at least suggest making them aware of it. And if it's something that they have in their near-term scope, again, I think it'd just be beneficial to leverage spend, and you got a construction crew out there, and, it's just an efficiency play. So I would fully support that dialogue. But thank you very much.
And thank you, Trustee Kutynek. And I know that Countryside Mayor Sean McDermott wears the hat as Countryside Mayor, and he also wears the hat as Highway Township person in charge. So we will make both formal and informal reach outs to Mayor McDermott to see, because I agree, while we're doing it, it seems like the perfect time to get it all done. And I know that our residents and all the people using the hospital and traveling that area would appreciate improvements. So thank you for bringing that up. Trustee Agassi.
Thank you, President Kukler. I had looking for some clarity, I guess, on the intersection of 47th and East Avenue. On page 3A19, it states in 2017, IDOT completed their Phase 1 preliminary engineering report that included conversion of the two-way spur road into one-way southbound. IDOT is currently targeting a letting for the project in the next 2 to 5 years. Is that from this year or a few years ago? And how are we tracking that? What are we expecting from that? And, how are we working with our neighboring municipalities to try to encourage that's closer to the 2 years versus the 5 years? What are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely.
I can help with that.
Sure. Yeah, no, please.
Yeah, so the reason we say 2 to 5 years. The reason that we're providing that range of time is because there is a right-of-way acquisition that's required for the project, and we do regularly check in with IDOT, and we understand that they are still working on that right-of-way acquisition that can take sometimes years to be completed. So the fact that it's in their current 5-year tip means that it's close in IDOT timeframes. But we do not know, and we do not yet have an exact date of when that construction is planned to occur. They won't set it most likely until after that right-of-way acquisition.
In the interim, we have been in contact with the project managers associated with that project for IDOT to kind of build that relationship and as a new person in the role, to have that touch point and that person to be able to reach out to within IDOT for questions, concerns, coordination, and updates.
Great, because I would imagine we're talking pretty good period of time between when that construction starts to when it ends. So if we're 2 years from now, we're probably 4 years from completion. So it'd be great to continue to hear updates on how that goes. I know that's a pinch point for many in the area. Mm-hmm. And are we that part, that spur is on the all Lagrange side, right? But the intersection touches Brookfield.
And McCook.
Yeah.
So there would be 3 communities involved in the intersection improvements with jurisdiction. The spur road is all located in Lagrange.
Okay, thank you. And two other questions. The parking area on Hillgrove, that is a taxi turnaround that is underutilized, and we did something similar at the Stone Station. That was denied, the angle parking request, or we've decided to not fund that yet. What explain to me what that's going to take to get, because parking's a pretty big deal in this town, 14 spots.
I believe the individual parking request was denied, but current reconfiguration of that parking included as Metro is now engaged in a larger rehabilitation improvement project for the Lagrange Avenue, Lagrange Road train station. So included in their project that's addressing truck pointing, roof, other improvements. They're also looking at that as they're making an investment.
I can add a little bit more. So the originally we had contemplated providing the parking very similar to what we have at Stone Avenue, as you mentioned. However, there is one engineering concern, and that's related to the proximity of the outbound shelter to the parking. And so the way that the parking would need to be configured there is slightly different than what is occurring at Stone Avenue. Metra was unwilling to consider alternatives to move some of the bike racks and maybe adjust that outbound shelter to provide for additional room for parking at this time. They did agree, and it's been like this for about 2 years now, or a year and a half. They did agree to modify what was just one stretch of parking for taxis, essentially. They did agree to allow us to actually stripe spaces for individual parking. I believe there's maybe 5 spaces there, and then 1 hour parking. We are continuing to work with them, however, on maybe increasing the time frame for that parking there. But for now, the businesses have expressed their appreciation for the additional parking. Especially there's a restaurant there and some other mostly faster service types of businesses that have appreciated the additional spaces.
Okay, thanks. And last question is regarding the Public Works building. Can't give you the page number anymore off the top of my head. I think I have it earmarked here, but yeah. 3A30, previously the village had earmarked 20,000 in this line item, and that was for the completion of long-term strategic plan for the Public Works building. So what was that for? Wanting to know a little bit more about the strategic long-term plan for that, because I discussed that before with the board, and that's a
Absolutely.
area of concern.
The miscellaneous engineering budget line item, which accounts for kind of unknown expenses that we anticipate for the upcoming year, that previously had been associated with an assessment of the Public Works building that didn't come to fruition each year. Recognize it's going to be a very busy slate for construction, as well as staff building and all those sort of other initiatives. We felt it was appropriate at this time to move the Public Work building assessment possibly into a future project, and move it back into a future year in this spot as the other needs of the service kind of balanced out. But for this particular year, it was to indicate that the 40,000 would be used for flexibility for other engineering needs that came up that may have not been anticipated in other line items.
Okay. Would you like to see that back in there next year?
I would love to see that in there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it for me, thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. And just to follow up on one thing, which is the 47th Street stop sign going to signalization. I'm well aware on social media, the petition and things, that it's popular. As a trustee, I didn't like it. I really continue to believe that there's what I would call at least unintended consequences from signalization of that intersection that will negatively impact Lagrange. I believe that the traffic speed going westbound will increase. We spent years after the tragic death with a young mother trying to reduce speed on 47th Street. This is going contrary to that. I believe that if the signalization moves and traffic flows better, traffic usually goes and ways in all these other directions, moves cars to the fastest way to get from A to B. That will increase traffic on 47th Street. That's exactly detrimental to what we tried to do. And that. Then you add the fact that we're going to make that spur from 2 ways to 1 way. I believe that that's going to force cars into Lagrange that otherwise would stay on East and 47th, will now go on to our residence streets. And these residents are going to see increased traffic, both car and truck. But that being said, it's an IDOT project. We're not taking the stance of slowing it down. It's moving on IDOT's speed. It's a large project. They have been working on it. A petition, I don't think, really isn't even addressed to IDOT, so I'm not sure that it's going to be very effective. But I understand that residents, or not residents, because I think a lot of people that are doing it live outside Lagrange, and that's my point, that want this, people that want this, I should say, want it. And so they're free to do a petition. But I did want to make my points again on my feelings of the signalization at 47th and East. Moving on to Trustee Gale.
Thanks, Mr. President. I had a few questions, sort of a little outside, sort of in the ballpark, but not quite directly related to all this. One is that, we talked about a buyout program of properties, and I think it's actually maybe more appropriately addressed to Lou. I was wondering, where would the funds come from if we were to buy out a residence? Is that from the capital program? Is that the general fund? I know we do transfers in between. Where would that, if you even know, like how would we do it?
Lou, while you look at that, I can kind of address that also. So the idea of all the general sewer projects, our hope would be that the MWRD would share in the costs. And our hope, and again, MWRD won't commit until there's a formal project, would be that the MWRD would pay 50% of the costs. The MWRD program wouldn't allow us they wouldn't join in acquiring property, but they could pay the costs for the underground storage of the water. So if we purchased 4 properties, and I'll just make up a number, $3 million, it would be our hope the MWRD would spend $3 million putting underground storage on a $6 million project. Again, the MWRD will not, at least in Lagrange, exceed 50% of the total contribution. So then it will become, whatever those numbers, where would we get that money? And that is the big question. Where do you get the money? And right now, we do have money. We have a bond sale. But if we allocate 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, whatever number it is, to a isolated project, we won't have it to do the 50th storm sewer project, unless we were to go to a second referendum, unless we were to go to a large sewer tax increase, sewer fee increase, and those are issues that eventually I think will come to the board. Right now, since we have a trial date, unless we could get some homeowners that were interested right now in near specific depression areas that make sense, it just doesn't seem to be the focus, at least for the next couple of months. If there was an area where homeowners were, we think this is the perfect area and we're interested, then that maybe would make more sense.
What would be the process if a homeowner wanted to? Would they just come to us? Would they come to Rick? Like, have we given that any thought?
I don't know that we really gave it any thought. They could, if there's a homeowner out there that's listening that would be interested in seeing if their house, I think making a inquiry to Rick, to Village Manager Peterson, to myself, to any trustee, and I think the trustees would then move it up to those people. That would be great.
Thanks, Mr. President. There was sticking sort of with this. So Rick, it's to you on page A. So it's 3A10, page 7 of your report. We sort of mapped out the 47th Street, sewer improvements, which we always go over. I'm just wondering why the timeline on that table on the bottom of the page, why is that so spread out? Can you speak to that, or is it just spread out because we just don't know yet when we can start?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, there are unknowns that we hope to have defined here shortly. We are showing a significant expenditure of design dollars and engineering construction, both in 23-24 as well as 24-25. I actually think that maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, we're indicating the 500,000, that actually should be in 23-24, if I'm not mistaken.
The 500,000 for?
Design services.
For which project?
For the for the 50th Street.
Yeah, those are based on,
right,
on the $500,000 were just a preliminary estimate on a possibility of project engineering. Those are based on the original schedule, I think, from when the project was first in the early discussion stages as when that may develop. There was the other pipe that would have had to have been built first. So that's just kind of the initial timeline that we're still working with. Really don't know exactly what the final timeline may be. But if we are moving forward with the project, I think we wanted to at least represent that there would be funding available. That's really using that whole $13.5 million that's currently available, assuming the project gets built over that timeline, which is still obviously yet to be determined.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about the timeline, which is what I thought.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and it wasn't a typo. I corrected that. We do have design services kind of spelled out over the next.
Yeah, no, and I get it. I get it. Yeah. And I think my other question was, I know it wasn't quite in here. I don't know when something like that might, but I know we've discussed sort of other smaller interim type issues. Are we still like options of, and I think the president alluded to it too, like options of like storing water temporarily at either school properties or park district properties. Is that, do we need to flush those out more before we try to work them in here, or is that, what's kind of the status of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do feel like the main goal is to understand the outlet capacity. As there's clarity as to what that looks like, that drives a lot of the potential other elements, the sequencing of what both the main kind of the main whole larger project would be and what those other potential opportunities. So all the puzzle pieces can be figured out. But any of those individual pieces are largely reliant upon available outlet and having a place for the water to transport. So it's the combination of both of those things, I think, that'll come to fruition in their future as the litigation moves forward.
And is that, Burke is working on that, right? Christopher Burke?
Correct. They took a preliminary look at that, and their assessment was largely that, in line with other engineers, that what governs this is the outlet. That's what needs to be fixed before a lot of those other pieces and parts can be designed. Otherwise, you're designing with a huge number of assumptions such that you're kind of not necessarily adequately allocating resources.
Okay, thanks. That was it.
Trustee Gale, I'll jump in there and just kind of add some to what you said. I do think on this timeline, it's interesting. I do think historically we've been doing this kind of almost putting in a placeholder while the litigation was sitting there. Now that we have a trial date, and again, the trial date's relatively new, haven't been assigned, I think it changes things. And I do think that we'll be meeting with the attorneys. I think the attorneys will be coming back and meeting in closed session with the board. And that will be one thing that's discussed is on their opinion as to when can we go out to bid? When does it make sense to start putting things together? Obviously, we're confident that we're going to win, but we don't want to spend money unwisely. So that's with the legal team, I think we'll look at. And are there opportunities that we can get things ready ahead of time or before even a decision's made that don't bind the village, but allows the village to be ready, whatever ready means, to go. So I do expect between now and really May 1 that the attorneys will be meeting with the board to talk about that and how the trial preparation's coming. So I think that's great. Secondly, the outlet capacity that you mentioned and the other projects, Burke did look at that again preliminarily, and there is opportunity engineering-wise to put things under various schools, playgrounds, and that. But again, it would only have, you're looking at outlet capacity and cost, and so it's limited. You may be able to address one depressional area for millions of dollars, but that would then probably prohibit you from doing the 50th Street project, and you'd only have one depressional area addressed. Or maybe if you completely said, no, I don't want to do the 50th Street project, maybe you'd have two depressional areas addressed, but there's no way that Burke is clear that that is not the best use of the money. The best use of the money continues to be the 50th Street project. They looked at things like tiger dams, which are, they fill up with water, and they're basically dams that people could the village could place out on curbs and things to stop water, which I, again, from my non-engineering background and using Google, thought maybe would be an idea that would work. Burke Engineering isn't nearly as enamored with the idea as I am, and they don't think it's a good use of our finances at this juncture, at least. So I do think that we have to kind of, if we hire an expert, we have to kind of follow what the experts say. And so they've indicated that a lot of those, what they call temporary fixes, smaller projects, probably at least this juncture, aren't the best. I'll give a plug again. They do believe that a Brainerd Avenue flood wall between Brainerd Avenue and the Country Club would be effective and would be a cost benefit. And we would like to work with the Country Club and trying to figure out a win-win on that. So we, as a village, remain hopeful that we can work with the Country Club to keep water from overtopping Brainerd Avenue. And we'll continue to work on that. So addressing those. Other trustee comments? Trustee Augustine.
Just to extend a little bit more on that Brainerd Avenue, because I was going to ask about that. You've fairly well explained that that's still a possibility, either the wall there between the street and the Country Club property. Is there been any further thought given to, or maybe it's been responded to the resident who asked about it at the, I think it was a board or two meeting ago, two or three meetings ago, where one of the residents asked about the levels of Brainerd and the before Brainerd was resurfaced and lowered, there was less water outflowing into the neighborhood. It seems like, you know, if we brought that back up, that could prevent some of the water flow, despite a wall or in addition to a wall. But you'd probably do one or the other. What's the answer to that, or what would be your understanding on whether that's even feasible as part of our plan?
Yeah, so that has been looked at, not, and I'll let Andre talk after I do. I think Baxter and Woodman or Burke looked at that in some detail. There's legal issues on whether or not that'd be permitted to now go back to where we were. And obviously, any inch helps, but it won't be as good as a wall. And I don't think you would do both just because it looks like we would be paying the cost of whatever is done. So, and then again, I'll let Andre talk about what has been studied on that, but it'd be my hope that we could work with the Country Club again to get something that is a win-win versus a half a win for the village and a no win for the Country Club, which would be basically not raising Brainerd Avenue up necessarily, but raising the curb to back where the curb height was. Or at least, again, in my layman's non-engineer idea, that's what I would advocate for. But Andre, I think that we have asked the engineers to look into that, correct?
Yes, so I can't add too much more than what you've already said because you really summarized it. There are some legal issues with just putting Brainerd Avenue back the way that it was. There was updated information provided by Baxter and Woodman as a result of the May storm last year. We had some data that was older from previous storms that we were using in conversations with the Country Club. When we met with the Country Club, we talked to them about those updated exhibits and the benefit that the wall would have on reducing flooding to that immediate depression area there to the east. And as President Kukler said, I think we are have the data then to meet further with the Country Club to hopefully further that objective.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. Any other comments regarding the budget issues? Seeing none, I'd just like to conclude for the residents that are watching at home. The village board continues to work to ensure that all tax revenues are spent efficiently. We understand that the property taxes paid by our residents are substantial, and we continue to work to make sure that all the funds are spent wisely. I do think that this budget, capital budget, where we're able to move from $700,000 back to $1 million is really based on the hard work, not only of the board and the prior boards, but our village staff. They work hard day in and day out for our residents to try to bring absolutely the best services. I believe they do a fine job in doing that. So thank you to the department heads. And I'd hope that you'll tell your teams how much we as the board appreciate all the efforts, because it's what makes the village run so well. So thanks in that regard. Kicking it back to the village manager, is there any more to the report?
That concludes our report. Thank you.
All right. Now, moving on to trustee comments. Does anybody have any comments? We have Trustee Kucinek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to echo your sentiment. This comments for Director Colby. When most people start a new job, they kind of ease into the shallow end, and you did a full cannonball into the deep end. And I was hoping you'd come up for water, and you absolutely did. And I think you did a great job. So thanks for the full immersion into the role, the detail, and I know we'll be very successful with you in that role. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Although those puns are probably appropriate since he's a former Coast Guard graduate and Coast Guard member. So
swimmer and water polo player.
And a water polo player from the fine Brother Rice High School. So yes, absolutely. Any more, Trustee Augustine?
Thank you, President Kukler. Also, thank you, Richard. It's been great getting to know you and seeing how you're coming into play here. We're all glad to have you. Also, welcome, Ben. We love and miss Mark Kukler and his expertise, and you are coming right in and with that connection still intact, and looking forward to getting to know you well. And also just a small shout out to the Lagrange Garden Club, Lagrange's oldest club, I believe, continually operating. I joined last year, and I don't get to participate in very much, but I don't have a green thumb, and so I was looking to learn a few things. And I did know that they participated in helping us with our planters and the beauty that we see in and around Lagrange. And it's always worth noting, I think, how much they contribute. Obviously, your department sources the flowers that they usually handpick, the type of plants that they want, and they try to change those up year to year. We provide the soil and distribute those flowers to all those planters in usually a day or two, a weekend, and I helped this year, and it's just really a magnificent, a coordinated effort by mostly women, some men who just get out there with their hands, and everybody brings their own little trowel, and they put these beautiful planters together that look just fantastic from day one. And that's all just a volunteer group just giving of their time. And also what I saw this year was the Public Works Director, the Public Works Department, mostly these guys just out there helping, smiling, saying, hey, nice to see you again. I mean, it really is a close group. You know, they've been doing this a lot. They seem to really enjoy each other. And it's just, there's a lot of pride in seeing that happen. And it's just something that people, I think, take for granted. And just good job on that. And I love that we're continuing to do that. And I think it's just a model program. But that's all the Garden Club and you guys. Thanks.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And we look forward to another successful spring planting with the Garden Club. Would be best. Milo's here. He's a big part of that effort, along with all the staff. And we look forward to they had input on the current spring planting slate. And we look forward to working with them again this upcoming season to make Grange beautiful.
Thank you. And to Andre and Lou, just great work on keeping this all in line. Thanks for making this so clear for us.
Thank you, Trustee Augustine. And before we close officially, one thing I should have put in my president's report, Countryside has their St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 5th in the afternoon. I believe it starts at noon or 1 o'clock. It's been going on for a number of years. It's getting quite large. They've asked Lagrange to participate. I have said that we would be happy to participate. They've indicated that they would assist with finding vehicles if anybody would need to use a vehicle versus March. I would open up it to all the employees and their families. We would love to have people come out that work in the village in March with us and bring their children, their spouses, parents, nieces, nephews, anybody else that would come. I know it's going to be a wonderful time. And so we'll be putting out more information in that regard, again, and kind of, under the banner of our employee recognition. We do really, as a board, want the employees to feel like we're a work family. And so this may be one way that, if anybody wants to, will come out and join us. So again, it's on March 5th. Thanks. And if there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, trustees. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And the meeting is adjourned at 9:30. Thank you.